Uh. Man, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune because it's time for episode 609 or something of the RecPoker podcast. I swear, Chris Jones takes 1 week off. John Somsky is doing a great job getting everything lined up, and I still managed to screw up the audio cue. Fantastic. It just has to be the way that we do things here on the RecPoker podcast. So thanks for joining us, folks. This is the chats edition of the show. We also have a forums episode every week just talking strategy. If you don't know, I'm your host, Jim Reid, Bluff Serini in the home game and at RecPokerJim on Twitter. And I have the best freaking job in the world talking poker with my friends here on the podcast every Monday night at 7:30 Eastern, live on YouTube. You can join us every week for free and win a prize just for showing up. Now, we're going to talk to the one and only Carlos Welch in just a moment. But first, I have to mention we're brought to you by Running Aces, the official sponsor of the RecPoker podcast. Most of what we do here is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization, so we really depend on support from our sponsors and also from our premium members who take part in our training material and study opportunities for only $22 a month. Some new premium members like Aiden Levin, Jason Blanton, and John Cowgill. So thank you, Aiden, Jason, and John, for joining up with the RecPoker family this week. You're going to love all our study groups, book studies, training videos, social events, just all sorts of great stuff you get to do here at RecPoker. But it's not just the premium membership. A lot of what we do is free. So you can sign up for a free account at rec.poker. All you need to join is an email address and a smile, but we do insist on both. But if you want to take your game to the next level and join our premium membership, you can always get your first month of premium for only $5 by using the code RecPoker at checkout. And if $5 a month or even $22 a month feels like a lot of money, I just want to remind our listeners that if you support your local food bank with a donation of any amount and send me proof of that donation, we'll also give you a free month of RecPoker anytime you like. So please do support your local food bank. All right, now, they let me host the show on Mondays, but I'm just one man. It takes a group, a gang, a crew to make all the magic happen around here. We call this group of wizards the RECing Crew. And if you want to find out more about me or the rest of the RECing Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew, or you can just listen up because you're going to meet a few of them tonight. Who are we starting with alphabetically by first name? It's not our producing co-host this week, but jump on in there, crew, and let our audience know who you are.
So first in the alphabetical first name is me, Joe Coolis. You can find me at Joe Cool PhD on Twitter or X or Elvita11 in the home game. As a RECing Crew member, I serve to provide a monthly workshop, as I like to call it, on the psychological concepts that may be impacting your game. That occurs the third Thursday of most months. I was supposed to tell you what's coming up this coming Thursday, but I'm going to keep it a secret. So show up and get excited about what's going to happen.
All right, I'm already excited. Who's next?
And I am John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek M and everywhere. And I host the toughest play money home games in the multiverse. And by popular demand, they are going to be occurring again every day, starting on August 1st. So you can have over 10 games every week to play from. So join us there.
I'm Kim Kilroy. I'm Pet Vet or Pet Vet 33 on the social platforms. I'm Fergie56 in the home game. And I try to run a hand history review group once a month on the second Wednesday of the month, but I'm often traveling the world. So if you don't see me, come the next one I do. Or just join my travel group and come traveling with me, because I also oversee a travel group for RecPoker.
Yeah, that's right. Kim Kilroy has the life that we all envy, spends a lot of her time just traveling the world playing poker. So come join along. Rob?
I'm Rob Washam. You can find me as Rabman50 just about everywhere. And on the first and third Wednesdays of each month, I host the book study. And we're currently covering Excelling at No Limit Hold'em by Jonathan Little. And actually, it's by many other people besides Jonathan Little. It's a compendium of different authors. So come join us. It's a fun read.
And so, as you can see, this is just a few RECing Crew members, a few of the crew here in the podcast booth, just giving you a little taster's choice of the smorgasbord of premium events that go on here every month. So come and get your first month for only $5. All right, now that's enough of that. We're here for Carlos Welch. So, Carlos, first of all, like, you've been on the show before. You and I have talked off and on over the years. You know, I'm a huge fan of the Thinking Poker podcast, as are many of RecPoker members. It's just a pleasure to have you back. I guess first, let me just say thanks for coming back on the RecPoker podcast, man.
No problem, man. I always enjoy it here. So thanks for having me.
Now, just in case, I'll tell our listeners, if you don't know who Carlos Welch is, climb out from under that rock you've been living under. And you can search for a previous episode to find out a little more about Carlos's story here on the RecPoker podcast. But Carlos, you're a player, you're a podcast host, you're a coach, but don't let me put you in a corner. If you were to meet someone who had no idea what you did in the poker world, how would you define your own role today in the poker industry?
I would say my role is as a professional poker student. I spend the majority of my time studying poker, maybe 60-40, maybe 50-50 some days, but pretty equal to playing. And my role as a coach is to help players not necessarily be perfect, but just to be a little bit better. So my goal is to teach others and myself how to make the easy money in poker, looking out and, not really trying to battle with the GTO wizards too much, but, just trying to exploit the people who aren't playing GTO.
Yep. And we talk about that on the show here a lot. Like, GTO is a great way to study poker, but you'll get slaughtered if you play GTO in the streets in the games that we're playing in anyway. So that's actually one of the things I'm interested in talking to you about, because you're the co-host of the Thinking Poker podcast, my favorite poker podcast. And you and Andrew, you talk a lot about some fairly sophisticated concepts and lines, and you take I'll just use the word sophisticated approaches to breaking down hands. How do you square that kind of strategizing that you do on the air with Andrew, and when you're not playing in those kind of like high roller, high experience games, and you do such a good job with game selection that you're playing against people that are not as good at poker as you, hopefully, right? I mean, that's kind of the plan.
That's the goal. Yeah.
That's the goal, right? Yeah. So how do you kind of square these two different poker brains?
It's basically what you said, which is I'll edit a little bit of what you said. It's not that you will get slaughtered if you play GTO against these players, is that you will just leave a lot of money on the table. So what I tend to do is learn from GTO and learn what they should be doing, and then pair that with what they actually are doing and seek to exploit the holes and the difference between those two things. And then, stepping out to exploit those things is going to cause me to also deviate from GTO, which makes me exploitable. And that's why it's important to make sure you play against players that are weaker than you, because they won't recognize that you're exploitable in these ways. So I study GTO to learn what should be done, not to actually do it in games where other people aren't doing it.
Yeah, I love that. Great answer. So I've got a bunch of questions for Carlos. I know the other RecPoker Crew members here have some questions for Carlos. I'll just remind our YouTube audience, if you've got questions for Carlos, just type them in the chat and we'll make sure that we ask them of him. Also, stick around till the end of the show. We'll do every week we do a raffle to give away a prize to help support the fight against food insecurity. So stick around to the end of the show and start typing the words food bank into the YouTube chat, and we'll give away a great prize there. And I see awesome guy and longtime RecPoker member Rob Delaney is back in the chat. Rob, thank you so much for the super chat. If you want to be a cool guy like Rob, you can make a donation to RecPoker through YouTube now, through our super chats or super comments and super stickies. It feels great. We finally made it as an organization, and we appreciate your support, Rob, and everyone else's. And we donate a portion of every YouTube donation to a local food bank as well. So thanks for getting involved. And I see some cool new faces in the YouTube chat as well. So I hope we get some questions for Carlos out of that. All right, so Carlos, we're gonna talk some poker strategy here, and we're gonna talk about game selection, and we're gonna talk about maximizing your edge in the games that we play. But first, let's talk about sort of like your life over the last little while. You've been co-host of the Thinking Poker podcast for a few years now. Does it feel like just very routine and everyday, and like this is where you're supposed to be? Do you still get kind of like, tingles and butterflies? What's that experience like these days?
Well, first, I don't know if you can see what I'm seeing, but my camera seems to be glitching out of it.
Yeah, you're having some interesting video feedback, but that's okay. Most of our audience is audio. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't.
It's kind of tricky.
I'm gonna plug it, unplug it and plug it back in, but I think my audio is still gonna be fine.
All right, yeah, you're coming through loud and clear.
Yeah, I think somebody might not be happy that I'm giving away the secrets.
No,
the Matrix.
That's right. They're hacking you. They're hacking your signal. He's giving away too much good stuff here on the show. All right, that
right. So yeah, as far as doing the Thinking Poker podcast, man, Andrew and I have been really good friends and talking very regularly for several years now. So by the time I became a host, I'd already had, several reps. Man, I must have been a guest on the show like 30 times before I became a host. So in a sense, I've always felt very comfortable on that show. So hosting it was kind of like a natural progression for me. So I won't say that, it feels like it feels normal. It feels normal to host the show just because I was on it so many times. I do get these tingling feelings though when we interview certain guests. Like I love Andrew, but I talk to Andrew every week. so it's not, I don't get super excited like, oh, Andrew again. Like Andrew's like a normal, like what I tell people is that you want your quality of life to be so good that a normal day is a great day. Yeah. So talking to Andrew is like that normal great day. But every now and then we take it up a notch and we interview people like Ape Styles recently we interviewed. And that was one that was like very exciting for me. So occasionally we talk to people that, unlike Andrew, people that I don't get to talk to as often. And, right. And those are the days where I kind of like, get pretty excited about doing the show.
Nice. But that's not the only thing that's new for you. You've kind of opened up a new part of your life that I think people wouldn't have described you. I mean, forgive me if I'm not saying this correctly, but up until pretty recently, people wouldn't have described you as a very like romantic person generally. But talk a little bit about what's new in that part of your life.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I haven't been on the show in a couple of years. I think the last time was like September of 2022. And at that time, I told the story of living in a Prius and bouncing back and forth between the Prius on the weekends, cheap Caesars hotels during the week.
Yep.
And since then, you notice this is not a Caesars hotel. And it's also not a Prius. I'm actually in a house now. Because thanks to the Thinking Poker podcast, last March, we did an interview with a poker player by the name of Gloria Jackson. And in the process of scheduling her for that interview and having conversations with her, we realized that we had a lot in common and we kind of hit it off. And we started a relationship together. And so now I live with Gloria. So now no longer living in the Prius. No longer living in the Rio. I'm living in a house with my girlfriend, Gloria Jackson. So that's the update on the Carlos Welch story.
Amazing. And I'll tell you, as someone who knows the value of the dollar almost as well as you, yes. I would have said that like you had sort of hit peak human evolution with the Prius, Caesars thing, but it feels like you've even managed to evolve one step level. When I listen to the episodes of Thinking Poker where you're describing your relationship with Gloria, it just like puts such a goofy smile on my face. Like, you guys are so cute together. Oh my God. So I mean, congratulations. It feels like you guys have really sort of found your soulmate, not to get all sappy about it, but that's really how it comes across.
Definitely. From the time we talked on that first phone call, it was evident. Just, trying to schedule her for the show, that was super evident. We call it team low and glow.
I see that. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see, like, right over my shoulder, here's a picture of her. But yeah, it's been amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So that raises this interesting situation where now you have this other thing in your life that you love so much. And I know you had other interests and like hobbies before, but poker was like your number one thing. How has this changed how you approach poker, how you approach the time that you spend studying, the time that you spend playing? Because there's a greater opportunity cost now when it comes to time that you can spend with your baby doll.
Well, fortunately, Gloria is also a hardcore poker player like myself. So basically, she was spending a lot of time playing and studying poker before me. I was spending a lot of time playing and studying poker before her. And now we just, join forces. Like I said, team low and glow. We are studying every day together, playing every day together. And I don't feel like I have to give up anything as far as my poker life to be in a relationship with her, because she is as much of a poker player as I am.
Congratulations again. That's fantastic and a great answer. I mean, so you've always struck me as someone who's sort of like living your best life. Like, what you want out of life, you're going after it, you're prioritizing it, and yeah, never change, man. That just sounds like just keep it up. That sounds awesome. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this. Oh, here I see Joe's got a comment. Joe Coolis, jump in there.
Well, I was going to go for a while. So if you want to talk about something.
No, please, no, jump in. Yeah, these people they hear my voice enough. Trust me.
Well, there are many who probably don't want to hear my voice anymore either. But so I've been a longtime listener to Carlos. If anybody doesn't do the Thinking Poker Daily and signing up for the Patreon, let this be the first plug that you can do, because the information there is great. I've received coaching from Carlos, and it was fantastic and changed my win rate at a lot of the low stakes stuff I've played. So all of it's great. I guess that's kind of what my question comes on, is that, you play poker for a living. Your Gloria plays poker for a living. You spend all your time talking to Andrew, who plays and coaches poker for a living, and you coach poker for a living, and then you do 655,000 presentations on poker. How do you manage not to actually go quite insane, given that that's really kind of what you're focusing on so much?
I went insane before I started focusing on that. Like, you have to be insane to even want to do this game for a living. And so when you were describing all this time I'm spending in poker, I'm getting those, like, feelings that Jim was talking about. Like, I absolutely love it. I never get tired of talking poker strategy. I never get tired of playing online, not live. I do get tired of that. But talking online poker, playing online poker, I love it. I love it. So it's a lot of hours, like you said, but what most people would consider a normal life, that would drive me insane. Like, this is my normal. So yeah, I don't have any problems doing it as much as possible.
So let's talk about that game selection again. So you mostly play online. I think part of that's because you have a very precise strategy, like your sizes, and like it's easier to be precise online. It's also, you don't have to leave the comfort of your home, especially now that it's an actual home. I mean, that's fantastic, even better.
Yes.
And part of it's just because you don't really relish the live experience as much. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what you don't like about the live poker game?
I will use an analogy of a, from a previous life. I was a teacher, and what I didn't like about being a teacher is that I maybe spent 10 or 20% of my time teaching.
Yes.
And the rest of it was being the counselor, the security guard, the father for a lot of these kids, the I don't know, gopher for the administration and chaperoning dances, everything except the actual teaching. And there was so much work to get the students, even prepared to receive the knowledge. That part of that job I did not like, which is why I'm no longer there. The part of actually transferring knowledge from myself to the student, that was great. I love teaching, but I did not like being a teacher. And I will relate that to being a live poker player. I love the game of poker, the strategy, um, like playing poker, trying to make good decisions. That's what I love. And there's so much stuff surrounding live poker that distracts from that. Especially something, I'll give you a great example. The main event that we recently had. You have a lot of really, really good players who know exactly what to do strategically, but then you get the bright lights on them. You get the TV cameras on them. You get the rail. You get, playing for more money than any human really should probably be playing for. And all of a sudden you see people doing things that they wouldn't normally do if it was just any other tournament, and their strategy starts to break down. And so that's what I don't like about live, is that in addition to what you said, you have to, go there, and you can't do it from the comfort of your own home. It's also, it feels more important than it actually is, and it causes you to play less well because of that. There's a lot of people who know the correct plays to make that may or may not result in them busting a tournament. And if they're just playing online at home, they pull the trigger. You put them in that same spot live, even if it's the same buy-in level, they don't want to pull the trigger because they don't want to bust when they play live, and it causes them to play incorrectly. So that's one of the things I dislike about playing live. Also, I'm very analytical when I play. And so, like I said, I'm looking for exploits. When I play online, a lot of times I'll use a HUD, and there's no HUDs live.
Right.
You can't do all the mathematical analysis that you can do online because you're being distracted by social conversations, or you know arguments. Like there's so many petty arguments that happen live, and missed deals, and everything but poker. Everything but poker happens when you play live poker, and that's why I don't enjoy it as much.
So I want to sort of get at this a little bit, because you're talking about how like people, their strategy breaks down and they start, behaving strangely when the lights come out. And isn't that a good thing for you though, when you're playing at the table with these other players who are now kind of out of their comfort zone, making mistakes that they wouldn't necessarily make online? Like, you're such an experienced player, you're kind of less likely to make those same mistakes, or to make smaller mistakes than they're making bigger mistakes. It feels like that's an advantage to you to play in some of these spots.
It may be, but you have to understand, a lot of these players, they are live players. And so they may have more experience in that arena than I do. And when it comes to the poker strategy, I may have an edge on them, but there's things live that they have an edge on me on. Like, for example, it never fails. Whenever I play live, I make some sort of misclick of using the wrong bet size.
Oh yeah.
Or putting in 2 chips thinking that's a raise, but apparently it's not a raise. That happened to me this summer. Those sort of things. Struggling, my eyesight is not the greatest, so struggling to like count the stack sizes across the table. Yep. So there's some pretty fundamental things that my lack of experience live causes me to do incorrectly, that players who may be less studied do better than me at some of the things around the strategic elements of the game. So when it comes to strategy, I agree. When these players get caught up in the atmosphere of live poker and it throws their strategic game off, that gives me an edge. But then, there's times where even I'm susceptible to some of those things where
Sure.
like, so here's the thing for me. I talked about some people love live so much and it feels so important that once they get there, they don't want to pull the trigger because they might bust. I'm a little bit too willing to pull the trigger because busting is a free roll for me. It's like busting is plus EV for me because I get to leave this place. So for me, that can be a good thing or a bad thing in certain
Sure.
spots. So I can't necessarily say being a better strategic player gives me an edge in a live environment.
All right, good answer. YouTube chatters, I see we got a couple questions coming up, so keep those coming. Also, I need some names of famous poker players. We're going to be playing Stake Study Stack with Carlos at the end of the show. So I need some suggestions from our YouTube audience for names of players or coaches or podcast hosts that we can really kind of put Carlos in the blender with. So I'm hoping we get some good names from that. So Carlos, so you have this. You've been made it clear over the years, like your game, you game select well. When you play in Las Vegas around the World Series, it's mostly in like satellite tournaments. I know you were a lammer grinder forever. But I found out this year that any donkey can go pretty deep in the main event. I wonder, why do you not choose to play in the main? Like, I know you could put a package together, you could get people to back you, you could play in the main for like whatever amount of money was important to you. And then you would definitely have a skill edge on the majority of the players on day one, up to whatever point. Why not play the main?
Couple of reasons. One is what we started this conversation off with, which is generally I don't like live poker, and the main is just the most absurd version of the thing that I already don't like.
Yeah.
It's way too much money to be playing for. It's way too long, and I don't want to say it's overhyped because it is our Super Bowl, so it should be hyped, but that's one tournament that's hard to treat like just another tournament. And if you're going to play it well, you have to treat it like just another tournament. And I know me personally, I would not be able to do that. So I've played it 3 times. And the first time I cashed it, and I can tell you I did not play my best. I played it to cash, which is a problem if you're trying to be plus EV in the long run.
Yes.
The second time I played it was the best I'd ever played it because I cashed it the previous year. I'm real big on like milestones. So you kind of get it out of the way. And next year, it's like if I cash, great. If I don't cash, great. I've, been there, done that. Now let me play my best and see if I can win this thing. And I ended up busting to Maria Ho with Queens against Ace King for a pretty big pot at the beginning of day 3 in 2016. And then in 2017, I kind of got in a spot where the players at my table were way more aggressive than I'd ever seen, and I did not know how to combat that sort of aggression. So I kind of was stuck like a deer in the headlights, like just not knowing what to do. I can remember vividly knowing my opening ranges, but never getting a chance to use them because there was always like a raise and a 3-bet in front of me.
Yeah.
And then when I'm under the gun, I'm not really getting too many hands. And if I do get a hand, there's a raise and a 3-bet, a 3-bet and 4-bet behind me or whatever. And it's like, I have no idea what to do. Even if I did know what to do, I don't know if I would have been able to pull the trigger because a lot of times in those spots you fight fire with fire. And like I said earlier, that's harder in the main event. So yeah, because it's a live tournament, it's just like the craziest live tournament there is. That's one of the reasons I don't play it. And the other thing you mentioned which is a very good point, is that I'm going to have a pretty significant edge in that tournament. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, things are getting closer. Day 6, day 7, now I'm the fish. So now when the big money is on the line, I'm not going to be one of the better players at the end game of that tournament. And so that would have been fine the first time I played it when I was playing at the cash. It's not that hard to, play too tight and too passively and cash the thing, but that hurts your chances of winning. And now that cashing does not excite me the way it would have before I cashed, then it doesn't make sense for me to play it unless I expect to be one of the better players in the end game. What I like to tell people is the first time I played it in 2015, I cashed it for $15,000.
Yeah.
If I were to play it now and I cashed it, it would be for 1.5 buy-ins.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't have the same ring to it. And so until I'm ready to cash this thing for 10, 20, 30 buy-ins plus, then I really should not be playing it. And I'm not at that point yet.
Yeah, I respect that. It's so I played a couple years ago for the first time and busted on the end of day 2. And this year when I played, I was playing to cash for sure. It was like very defensive. I was like passing on all sorts of spots, and I definitely hurt, my chances to go deep in it because I was just like turning down these spots and trying to preserve my stack. But having cashed this year, I'm on exactly the same trajectory that you're talking about. I was already talking to my wife about it. Like, well, if I play next year, like, we're going for it. Like let's take some flips on day 2. I don't care. Like, like let's build a stack. Let's try and just like pull the trigger when it's demanded. But can I? I don't know, because that is a tricky. Like, there's a lot on your mind when you're playing a $10,000 tournament. So yeah, I respect that. I respect that answer a lot, because you would get all sorts of intangible benefit from playing in it. From like, even if you don't go deep, like, people get to see you playing in it, and if you do have a deep run, is obviously it's great for your reputation and your coaching and all that kind of stuff. So I really feel like I'm really impressed with your restraint, because it feels like something that. So what are you doing instead with your time when all these other glory hunters are playing the main event?
I am taking money from the glory hunters who don't make it. So you have hundreds of thousands of people who are trying to satellite their way into the main event.
Yeah.
And most of them won't make it in. But you will get a few that'll, I'm pretty sure there's a story of every year of someone who, unlike Moneymaker, got in on a small satellite and kind of worked their way through it and went deep for a pretty big score. But that's rare for a reason. The would-be moneymakers are playing badly in those satellites and losing money to me, who a player who specializes in the satellite, as opposed to just trying to win their way into the main. So in the beginning, that first week of the main, they tend to run a lot of big satellites for people who want to get into it. During that time, I'm playing the satellites. And then when the satellites are over, when you get to like, I don't know, day 3, 4, 5 of the main, I'm primarily playing on WSOP.com, which is now called WSOP Online. And that's my way of trying to do what you said in terms of get my name out there, going deep in a WSOP event. In fact, that's where, a lot of people know me from winning the bracelet on WSOP.com a couple of years ago. And I can tell you it was much easier to get through 1,000 player field for a bracelet than a 10,000 player field for a main event win. And let's say if I played the main event and cashed it, even if I final tabled it without cashing it, I don't know if that would have brought me the same type of reputation that being a bracelet winner does.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. So talk a little bit about what is different in your life since winning the bracelet, because that is kind of that's a binary thing. You know, there's the world of poker players who have not won a bracelet, and then there's the Carlos Welches of the world. So like what was that like? What was that? What were the differences in your life that came from that? Great or small?
So the main difference is, like you said, reputation in terms of being a coach, being someone who not just, of course, the win is great,
Sure.
but being someone who's not a live player, who primarily plays online on Ignition, where there's no records, it's harder. It was hard for me as a coach to market myself because I couldn't point to Hindermob to say, oh,
Right.
these are my scores. And even, some of the other online sites, like they don't report the Hindermob. But when you play circuit events or bracelet events on WSP.com, they do report to Hindermob. And so that was a big change for me. Like, every time I'm getting cashes, like, people can look me up and say, okay, this guy maybe does know what he's talking about. Because for a while there, I was trying to get coaching and people would, check me out on Hindermob and like, oh, this guy hasn't
Right.
played anything since 2015 or whatever it was at the time. And so that, that's almost like my marketing budget is my, WSP.com play. And
Cool.
to cap that off with a win just made it even better. So it helped in terms of getting students. It helped in terms of product creation. Alex Fitzgerald and I created a product called How to Win an Online Bracelet, where we took every hand from my bracelet win, as well as other deep runs. I made like 5 deep runs that year, and we kind of put together what we call a summer simulator for people to just go through every hand I was dealt, hear us discuss the decision-making process in each hand, and being able to have a product called How to Win an Online Bracelet. Like that would have happened if I got second.
Yeah. That's right.
Right. So there's a big difference between second and first in these. It's such a, I mean, this goes back to what, Joe's question earlier. We have to be pretty insane to play a game where there's so much difference between first place and second place, both which are like super improbable in a 1,000-player field. But yeah, getting over that hump definitely was like, a game changer and a life changer for me.
Yeah, we talk on the show from time to time about how silly it is the way that you credentialize yourself in the poker world. Like you can either make millions of dollars playing cash in like publicly available settings,
Yeah.
or you can like happen to win some large field tournaments, which obviously a lot of skill goes into that. Of course it does. But you also have to get lucky, and you also have to like be in a position to win the tournament. And like you say, the difference between becoming first and second, one hand, one flip, but it can make the difference between being like, the guy and just another excellent poker player who doesn't find that spotlight. Was that like before you won the bracelet? Did that concept kind of like frustrate you or drive you mad, or like, because you're an excellent player, but like you say, you don't have this credentialing, you don't have this certificate on the wall you can just point at. What like how did you deal with that? I mean, obviously you were like, I'll just go out and win a bracelet and that'll solve that problem. Yeah.
Right. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about milestones. So like I said, I played the WSOP main event before and cashed it. That's kind of another thing that was kind of like a stepping stone for me. And then after that, it was like, okay, I've cashed the main before. So
Right.
cashing some random online bracelet event isn't going to do much for me. What's the next milestone? Is okay, I've never final table a main event, a bracelet event before. And so when I played that tournament, my goal was to final table it. And just like in the main event, in your experience in the main event, wanting to survive long enough to final table it caused me to play too passively and too tight in spots.
Yep.
So I'm playing this tournament. I'm not playing my best for that exact reason. but I meet my goal. I meet my goal, you know, of making the final table. So now I'm like, okay, this is great. Now, you know, this is another feather in my cap of being able to say that, you know, I've, you know, made a main event. I made a bracelet event final table before. But then when I got there, I needed a new goal. My new goal, my new goal was to beat my biggest score, which at the time was like 27K. And I want to say it was like fourth place that paid like 35 or 38K. That was my new goal after I final tabled it. Once I beat that, it was like, okay, I might as well just win this thing now. So now, like, you know, the gloves are off, and I was able to take the aggressive actions, and even, you know, I had to make a big call at one point, three-handed, knowing that if I bust here, it's okay. I've already reached multiple milestones that I hadn't reached before, and I'll take this spot. If I lose, hey, I'll get it out of the way, and then next time I'll just win it next time. But luckily, I was able to win the flip three-handed that set me up to win the tournament. And to answer your question, um, I was aware of this whole idea of the importance that we put on winning a bracelet, but it didn't seem like something I was ready for yet. So, like I said, I was just trying to get to the final table, and I'll win the bracelet next time.
Yeah.
And so I was just going through my baby steps and my milestones, and I was just fortunate enough to, you know, skip a couple of steps there and make it to the big one. So, yeah, that's how I handle that whole thing, is just like set milestones and baby steps and get there on your own schedule, as opposed to trying to force it, you know, the first time you play these events.
I feel that. That's why I intentionally busted short of six figures this year, because I want to leave that as an available threshold in the future. You know, sort of like lay the groundwork now. Give yourself something to strive for.
Right.
Good for you, man. That's awesome. So I'm going to take blah blah blah. I'm going to take some questions from the YouTube chat here. This is from Joe Malay. He says, "What's the biggest lesson you've learned from poker that you apply to your life?"
The biggest lesson that I've learned from poker that I apply to my life is that it's not that serious. That can apply to so many things in life that people get wrapped up, get worked up on. It's like, I'll give you an example. So recently, I hope she doesn't mind. I'm going to use Gloria as an example here. Recently, she made a decision to purchase something that was around 150 to 200 bucks that, you know, she later realized that maybe she shouldn't have. And she was kind of regretting it. But then, you know, having conversations with her, it was like, I just lost a buy-in. Not a big deal. And it's like you realize there's so many things in life that we can get hung up on, where in poker we're like trading hundreds or even thousands of dollars back and forth all day. And for, you know, people who aren't insane, to use Joe's question from earlier, that's crazy to them, to be trading this amount of money back and forth. And it's normal for them to get, you know, super, you know, emotionally invested in some real life decision that pales in comparison, in terms of dollar amount, to what we win and lose in poker. So poker definitely makes me less risk averse in life. Definitely more willing to take chances in spots where I'm making calculated risks in terms of like investing. And when it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. Like, you know, most things aren't that serious. Just, you know, have a good solid baseline that's, you, like I said about, you know, Andrew Brokos, great friend of mine. Normal day talking to Andrew is like great. This is a great normal life of mine. And using poker to remind myself that as long as my baseline is great. Playing on ignition is great. I don't have to like, take whatever chances some people might have to take to, reach for some extreme, like, the main event. And then you have other people who are like, not happy with their normal life. So they're kind of reaching for extremes in their normal life, and it causes them to get in trouble. So, yeah, poker just teaches me to chill out in life. So that's probably the biggest lesson it's taught me.
That's a great one. I love it. We've got one from Joe Walton in here about our earlier conversation about playing satellites. So you used to be able, you'd get these lammers and you could sell them to other players. There was this, I think a couple years ago, they said that they were no longer transferable. And I think they changed that rule again this year. But to answer Joe's question, like, what do you do with the satellite tickets? So what do you do now with the satellite tickets that you win, since you're not using them to enter the main event?
Right. So before they would give you lammers, and then you would have to sell the lammers for cash. Now they basically just give you cash.
Okay.
So they don't give you a ticket when you go to the payout line. You either ask to be, registered for the event, or you can ask for cash. So it's just basically took the middleman out when it came to the lammers. So they're essentially survivor tournaments now, where it pays cash, not a seat to an actual tournament.
Yeah. And that seems like a good, I mean, that seems on paper to be a good way to do it. As someone who's more involved in the structure of them, do you think that's a good solution?
I do. It definitely cuts down on things that look bad.
Right.
Before the last year, when WSOP made the ruling where the lammers would not be transferable, it was because you would have a lot of people hassling players in line to try to get them to buy the lammers. And it kind of created some chaos that was kind of unnecessary. And WSOP did a great job of removing that market, so that now you don't have people being hassled in the lines. You don't have players who have lammers to sell potentially getting lowballed, because like some players did not realize that these should be sold for face value. So a lot of good things happened by this decision, and I'm very happy with it.
Good. We've got some more questions in the YouTube chat. This one's from familiar face Craig Savage, who says, all right, Carlos, think carefully. Who is your all-time favorite poker student?
Craig is definitely up there as one of my all-time favorite poker students. Craig has been a friend for a long time, so I'm really happy to see all the great things that he's doing in poker as a player, and then also now, behind the scenes in terms of working with 100K Studios and also RecPoker. So shout out to my good buddy Craig Savage.
Nice. And he also wants to know who is the best poker player in your home?
Me. And if you ask Gloria, she will say her. And
yeah, that's probably the way it should be, isn't it?
Right. So every poker player should feel like they're the best when they're playing, and they should feel like they're the worst when they're studying. So that's kind of how I feel.
I like that. Joe Walton has a comment here about he says he likes the way you're talking about deviating from GTO. He's been thinking a lot about it recently, trying to quantify the deviation in broad terms. He's sort of working to refine it in a way to make it applicable. How do you sort of decide? Let's say you're at an online table with unknown players. Like how do you decide in which ways to deviate, and what do you look for as like signals from other players for like, oh, I should deviate in this way against this player?
Right. So the main thing I'm looking for is kind of the classic mistakes that you would expect new players to make. Basically being too passive, looking for players who are like limping in, which immediately, if you're trying to play GTO, the moment someone limps, it breaks the whole sim. Because there's no limping in a lot of spots in a GTO game. So that's your first sign that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be trying to apply GTO to this game because it doesn't apply to this game. So limpers, players that are overly tight, basically overly anything, overly tight, overly aggressive, overly passive, overly loose. And in order to know if it's over or under, you kind of have to know what the baseline is. So that's the purpose of studying GTO, is so that you know what to deviate from, as the question mentions. So like I said, limpers is a big thing. If you're seeing a whole lot of multi-way pots, that's a good sign that this is not, a GTO environment, because you don't see a whole lot of multi-way pots in GTO. And I have had some of the same issues that the correspondent has had, because I tend to overexploit sometimes. I'll deviate too much. And I've been receiving some coaching lately that has pointed that out to me. So maybe something I can share, something that was told to me that may be helpful for this for the person who asked this question. A lot of times, one of the leaks, one of the ways that I'm exploitable, is that I will fold too much to 3-bets and fold too much to check raises. And the reason I do that is because generally, when you look at a solver and see which bluffs people are supposed to be 3-betting with and check raising with, a lot of times they're not finding those bluffs. So their range is too value heavy. And so as an exploit, I'm purposely folding more, even though my fold percentage is not in line with what the GTO fold percentage would be, because it would be expecting those bluffs where I'm not. But if you use a program like GTO Wizard, you can see the expected EV gain from making these calls. And what I would say to the correspondent is that if you feel like you are trying to determine the degree of deviation, where you want to deviate to exploit, but you don't want to overdo it. Start with the spots where there's mixes. So like you raise, you get 3-bet, or let's say you c-bet and you get check raised. Some of the hands you're supposed to defend with are mixes between calls and folds. If you want to start overfolding because this person's bluffing too much, then start by getting rid of anything that's a mix and just pure fold those. And the next thing you want to do is just look at the EV of how much expected EV gain, how much EV you expect to gain from all the other calls, and then start taking out some of them that aren't like super plus EV. A mistake that I was doing is that I would tell myself, I would do something that we always tell students they shouldn't do in poker, which is never use the word never.
Right.
Never use the word never always. And so there's spots where I would fold because I would say, oh, this guy's never bluffing here. That's not true. He may be under bluffing, but he's not never bluffing. And so the best bluff catchers, I should still continue to call with. And in the past, I would fold even the best bluff catchers against a player who I thought was never bluffing. And so I've deviated to a degree that's too extreme. And so I'm learning to kind of curtail that a bit and continue to exploit and not play in the GTO way, and, call with the hands that are at a mix, or even the hands that are like slightly profitable defends versus check raises. I think I'm still okay in, the passive games that I play in to let those hands go. But the top tier, the mid tier bluff catchers, or I wouldn't even call them bluff catchers, hands you're supposed to continue with versus a check raise, I can't fold those because this guy is quote unquote never bluffing. That degree of deviation is way too far.
Okay, that's a great answer. And I'm going to take a couple minutes here and just follow up in strategy land here, because you touched on a subject that we've been talking about this week in sort of some of our study groups, which is facing 3-bets. So facing 3-bets is kind of like playing out of the blinds. It's an inherently unprofitable position. So
Yes.
Most players are losing. If you filter their hands in Poker Tracker 4, facing a 3-bet, most players are losing, just like they're losing playing out of the big blind. So the question is, how can you lose less it's not a question
Exactly.
even of becoming like a profitable player in that spot. So we were talking a little bit about like, so what are some of, like, well, I'll just ask you. So what are some of the hands? And again, we don't know stack sizes, we don't know position, we don't know where we are in the tournament, but like just thinking about the qualities that make certain hands different from other hands. What are some of the hand qualities or the hand types that we should be calling 3-bets with, as opposed to other kinds of hands?
I will focus on tournaments because that's my game of choice.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in tournaments, you're around 30 to 40 bigs when you're facing these 3-bets. And at that stack depth, if your opponent is not 3-betting with an appropriate number of bluffs, which tend to come from hands like small suited aces, sometimes even offsuit aces, depending on where they 3-bet from, like, for example, from the big blind. And even, there's spots where they should be 3-betting with stuff like 10-8 suited. If they're not finding those a little bit more hard to find 3-bets, their 3-betting range is going to be very big card heavy. Mostly, I would say essentially pure value. Sometimes it's more of a linear range than a polarized range like it should be in certain spots. And when that's the case, hands like, say, Queen Jack suited, Queen 10 suited, Jack 10 suited, those sort of hands suffer in that scenario, because if their 3-betting range is heavily comprised of big cards that have these Queen high and Jack high hands dominated, then oftentimes you can be in a bad spot with reverse implied odds if you hit a pair. And because I'm talking about tournaments where we're like, around 30 to 40 bigs deep, the straight draw and flush draw potential of your hand suffers, because in a 3-bet pot, the SPR is going to be lower. So if you hit a pair, you're screwed. And if you hit a flush draw, you're going to be in a spot where it's going to be hard to bluff them off of the strong hands in their range, because the SPR is so low. They're supposed to go broke with aces on a lot of boards when, the SPR is like 2 or less. So those would be the first sort of hands I would tend to let go of if I think my opponent is, if their 3-betting range is devoid of bluffs and they're heavily weighted towards value hands that have these middling hands dominated, I would let those hands go. And I would be way more likely to call with something like 6-5 suited than Queen Jack suited, because that hand is not going to be dominated by this opponent's big card heavy 3-betting range. And also you're going to be a little bit more clear on like which boards are good for you and which, like 6-5 suited is not going to have a whole lot of reverse implied odds against, a tight 3-betting range. So I would say it's important to, because a lot of people will defend with hands based on their absolute hand strength. Queen Jack suited is better than 6-5 suited. So if I was going to fold one, let me fold the 6-5. But that's actually a mistake when you think about how your hand interacts with the range you're up against. So I would say the small suited connectors tend to play better in this scenario, as well as the small pairs, because the pairs are generally set mining. And when you're set mining, it's a good thing that your opponent is 3-betting with too value heavy of a range, because now when you hit your set, you're going to get paid. The last thing you want to do is set mine against a person who's bluffing so much that when you miss your set, you fold to their C bets. And when you hit your set, they fold to your check raise. So yeah, small pairs are, better designed to beat these strong 3-betting ranges. So to answer your question, make sure you're not folding too much with hands like 6-5 suited and hands like, 5s and 6s.
Yep. Great answer. And I really like the way you talk about those like kicker problems when it comes to those like second best hands. Because a lot of players, I look at a lot of databases of recreational players through our own coaching program, and like a lot of players would be better off if they just like always folded every hand they had a jack in it. It's like it's just one of these things where it's like you're gonna lose big pots and win small pots, and it's a tough spot to be in. Okay, so you're still gonna fold a lot when facing a 3-bet. You're gonna call with some of these hands that are not dominated by the 3-betters range. And then, you talked about kind of fighting fire with fire a little bit. So we're going to be 4-betting in scenarios where we are 4-betting. We're obviously going to be doing it with the best hands like aces and kings. How important is it to have like a bluffy, or maybe that's not even the right way to think about it. How important is it to have more combos of hands in your 4-betting range than just aces and kings? And once you run out of value hands, because I check every day, they're not making any more value hands. What are the other hands that you should include in a 4-betting range to make you not exploitable, where people can just fold every time you 4-bet?
Well, this goes back to the same issue that the player type that we're discussing has with their 3-betting range. I'm able to fold hands like Queen Jack and Jack 10, which, to your point about, not playing hands with a jack in it, those sort of hands in 3-bet pots often make bluff catchers. And if you're up against a player who has a value heavy range and probably the tendency of not bluffing often enough, that's kind of a problem to have a bluff catcher against a person who doesn't bluff often enough. So against that player type, I'm not really worried about constructing a balanced 4-betting range, because they're already 3-betting such a strong range that I don't need to 4-bet bluffs in order to get action with my big hands, because the purpose of, I kind of just, inadvertently said it. The purpose of the bottom of your range, your bluffs, is to generate action for the top of your range. But if these players are already 3-betting such a value heavy range that they're going to give action to the top of your range, then you don't have to have a whole lot of bluffs at the bottom. If you're up against better players where they have been studying some GTO and they do know that their 3-betting range can't just be comprised of value hands, then you want to look for hands that block their value and unblock their bluffs. So the quintessential hand that you see often is like ace-5 suited. That's like one of the hands that, besides aces, that hand might be played more aggressively than any other in a lot of spots, because it does a pretty good job of balancing, an ace-heavy, pocket aces heavy range, because it blocks your opponent from having, calls or continues like pocket aces or ace king, and it tends to unblock a lot of bluffs. So generally what you want to look for when you're playing, and I have to really stress this, when you're playing against competent players who have studied GTO ranges, there are spots where you know what you're supposed to be opening, and they know what the bottom of their opening ranges should be from those spots. And the bottom of that 3-betting range is going to be tailored to the bottom of your opening range. So now the bottom of your 4-betting range should be tailored to the bottom of their 3-betting range. So basically, the worst hands you're opening, they don't want to 3-bet a lot of hands that contain those cards, because that blocks your folds. So you now know that the worst hands in their 3-betting range tends to be just the hands just above, the cards just above the worst hands in your opening range. So now you don't want to block that second tier when you're 4-bet bluffing. So a lot of times we're looking at nines, tens, sometimes eights if we're talking about opening from like later position. But you generally don't want to have too many, say, like 9, 10s, or jacks in your hand when you're 4-bet bluffing, because you're looking to make this person fold hands that contain those cards. So you don't want to block their folding range, and you want to unblock their their continuing range. So I like to call these cards Biggie Smalls. Hands like ace-5 suited, where there's like a big card and a small card, because the big card blocks the value and the small card unblocks the folds. And so those sort of hands are played pretty aggressively in a lot of spots.
And some of the best Biggie Smalls out there are like suited wheel aces that can make the nut flush, they can make the wheel straight. And so that's why we see other hands like King 5 suited sort of populate these ranges a bit, because they have that. They can't make the straight, but they can still make a decent flush. They still block the value and unblock the bluffs and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a very, very, very good answer. And if people want to learn more about this kind of stuff, we have a bunch of resources here at RecPoker as well, but they can subscribe to Thinking Poker Daily through the Patreon account. I don't know, I think you guys have like 500 episodes of just the Thinking Poker podcast, but you also have this Patreon supported Thinking Poker Daily, where folks can contribute, I think, as little as a few bucks a month, and still get a few episodes of you and Andrew just talking poker strategy for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes a day, which is pretty spectacular. There's a comment here about who is this one from? Sorry, I saw this just a second ago. Oh, it's from my nemesis, Phil Razor here in the YouTube chat. Wonderful fellow. It says, I recently bought the video that you and Andrew did for your deep run on, or for his deep run on ACR a couple months ago. Is there anything else like that coming soon? And where would people go to find excellent, high quality training material like that from you guys?
So anything from me and Andrew, you will find at nickcast.com. And anything from myself and Alex Fitzgerald, Assassinato, you will find at pokerheadrush.com. The answer to whether or not there's something like that coming from us in the future, I'm going to say I hope so, because they usually come after either Andrew or Alex or I, go deep in some big tournament and win a whole bunch of money. So, God willing.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're all rooting for that.
Another one of those will be coming up. But thank you, Phil, for purchasing that product, and I hope that it's been helpful to your game.
So you've been very generous with your time, Carlos. Thank you. We're going to roll into our closing segments here. We'll play Stake, Study, Stack, and then we will close the action with our speed round. So I'll just tell folks, John Somsky, you can start lining up a few names for Carlos and Stake, Study, Stack. And I'll just tell folks, we're about at that point. We're going to let Carlos go after these two segments. So if you start typing the words food bank into the YouTube chat right now, we'll start with Robert Delaney's, he'll be number one from earlier in the show. And we're just going to roll a dice or a die and see who the winner is going to be today of our food bank raffle. There's some great prizes that we give away every month. And I just want to remind our listeners that the reason we do this is because it's kind of a hard time in the world right now. And people that might surprise you who they are, might need a little help putting food on the table for themselves or their family or a loved one. And if you just pull out your phone and Google food bank near me, you'll find some organizations in your own area that could benefit from a few dollars out of your pocket, a few volunteer hours out of your week, or some non-perishable food items from your own pantry. And I just encourage you to make that donation, make that sacrifice, and make the world a better place just a little bit in your own backyard, helping folks in your community. It's just everyone needs a little help right now, and it's a great way to contribute to your own neighborhood. So start typing the words food bank into the YouTube chat. And John Somsky, let's see if we can give Carlos like some tough decisions off the felt here in Stake, Study, Stack.
I believe we have some tough decisions for you. So if you're familiar with the game Kiss, Marry, Kill, this is very much based on that. It's the poker version of that. And it was invented by our very own Eric Jin. So you're going to pick one. I'm going to give you three names, and one person that you want to stake, one person that you want to study with, and one person that you want to stack and just take all their chips, whether it be in a cash game or poker tournament or whatever it is. And the three names I'm going to give you are three that you have mentioned on this podcast and are very familiar with.
Okay.
So it's Andrew Brokos, Alex Fitzgerald, and Gloria Jackson. So which one do you want to stake? Which one do you want to study with? And which one do you want to stack?
That is a great question. And let me put some thought into this. Okay. What I do know for sure is that I would want to stack Andrew. Definitely stack Andrew because of the three names you mentioned and myself, Andrew is the one who's most likely to have a pile of money on the table. So the biggest financial reward in stacking one of these players would definitely come from Andrew. Andrew has been known to play some pretty high stakes. Preferably, I would like to stack him in one of his many deep runs in the main event. If I could stack Andrew on like day 5 of the main event where he's like, one of the biggest stacks, that would be pretty life-changing for me.
Such a Carlos answer. I love that. All right, yes.
And I would say study with Alex because he is one of the best coaches out there, in my opinion, for the games I play. He's done so much to help my game. And, he's the sort of player that I wanted to be like as I was coming up in poker, in terms of being really good at game selecting, really understanding the games he plays, and also having the ability to, transfer that understanding and knowledge to his students. So I would definitely want to study from Alex, and I would definitely want to stake Gloria, because when Gloria wins, I win. And when I win, Gloria wins. It all comes back to the same house. So she's definitely the number one choice when it comes to a player to stake.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Thanks to Eric Jin for coming up with that wonderful segment. We have so much fun with that every week. All right, Carlos. Well, we don't have our soundboard operating today, so we're going to do this without the dramatic TikTok noise in the background. But I want you to imagine this is like the lights are on, the camera crews are out, the pressure's on. So this is closing the action. The most important thing is that the answers are quick, fast, honest, and if you need to pass, you can just pass. That's okay.
Okay.
Well, and we're going to start you off with an easy one. Here we go, closing the action with Carlos Welch. What is your favorite poker hand?
Aces.
Is poker a gamble or a skill game?
Skill game.
What's your biggest poker pet peeve?
Biggest poker pet peeve. Being results oriented.
Good answer. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Yes.
Is Ace King a drawing hand?
No.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
What about a Pop-Tart? Is a Pop-Tart a sandwich?
No. Neither of these things are food either.
Good, yeah, true. Good point. What's one thing that you are afraid of?
One thing that I'm afraid of is not being me.
Should vacations be lazy or busy?
Lazy.
What's your favorite? I was going to ask you what your favorite brick and mortar poker venue is, but like, what's your least not favorite brick and mortar poker venue?
Definitely the Wynn. The Wynn Casino is when I do force myself to go play, is usually there.
That's a common answer here. All right, what about a taco? Is a taco a sandwich?
No, I don't think so.
Or what about an open face sandwich? Is an open face sandwich a sandwich?
Sounds like it.
It does, right?
Yeah. I think that would be a sandwich.
Okay, one piece of bread though, just for the record. Like we're
Right.
really pushing the envelope here. All right.
Right.
Who's there's a yellow light coming up. Slow down or speed up?
Oh, speed up.
Are you, when it comes to tournaments, are you pro chop or no chop?
Tournaments, I would say no chop. Satellites pro chop.
Nice. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes. Preferably without the pizza. Just the pineapples.
Ooh, there you go. Pineapple fan. You don't have to make this your favorite musical artist, but just name quickly one excellent musical artist that you enjoy.
I'm gonna say Tupac.
What about a calzone? Is calzone a sandwich?
I think that might be a sandwich, Jim.
Hey, all right, we got a
I think
sandwich.
that might be a sandwich.
We got a sandwich. And what's one thing you cannot live without?
Freedom.
And everybody's got one. Who is your poker nemesis?
Poker nemesis. Carlos from 6 months ago.
Oh, I love it. All right. I don't know if you can tell, but the TikTok noises have died down in the background now. The rush is over. I've got one more question for you, which is, what's one thing we can do, whether it's at the poker table or away from the poker table? What's one thing we can do to make our lives more fun?
One thing you can do to make your life more fun is to need and want less.
Such a good answer. Yes.
The worst thing is this desire that can't be filled. But when you learn to live and be happy with a very simple life, every day is amazing. Every day is amazing. So need less and want less.
I can see all the Stoics in the panel nodding along sagely. Yep, that checks out. All right, I'm doing some quick math here. Carry the 4, 924 points. Pretty good result there, Carlos. All right, pretty good in the speed round. Over 900. That is rarefied air. All right. So folks are typing food bank into the YouTube chat. We're gonna wrap up the interview here, and we'll continue talking about some upcoming events and some home game results and some other fun stuff like that. Carlos, this has been such a pleasure. I knew it would be. If our audience wants to say thanks for coming on the show, is there like a newsletter they can subscribe to, or a website to go visit, or subscribe to the podcast? What's the number one thing that people can do to sort of help you out and to make your poker mission more successful?
So for all things Carlos related, I would point people to my Twitter handle, which is Hip Hop 101 Trivia. And in the profile link, in the profile section, you will find a link to all my coaching information. And you can also get that directly at tinyurl.com/Carlos Welch. And yeah, if you have any questions for me or, any comments, you can find me at on Twitter. That's usually where I spend my online time.
Yeah, my condolences about that. I also spend a lot of my online time on Twitter, and it is a hellscape. But
I should say I used to spend a lot of times there. Since I met Gloria, I'm spending most of my time with her, and we're not online very often unless we're playing or studying. So I would say if you're trying to reach me, that's the way to reach me. But I'm not on there, 5 hours a day like I used to be.
Yeah, well, we'll make sure thank God. We'll make sure the link to that Twitter handle is in the show notes. So if folks want to reach out, they can just scroll down in the show notes and connect. Well, thank you so much, my man. I'm gonna keep listening to Thinking Poker. It was the first poker podcast I ever listened to. I really give you and Andrew and Nate a lot of credit for my own sort of poker journey. I quote you guys all the time. It's a fantastic resource, and like I say, I'll just mention again to our listeners, I host a podcast, and it is my favorite. Thinking Poker is my favorite poker podcast. So go and check that out. And yeah, Carlos, I hope we get to cross paths again soon. Thanks for your time and for your expertise and for coming back on the RecPoker podcast.
Thank you so much, Jim and Joe. I will see you tomorrow in the Thinking Poker Daily meeting.
There you go. All right, we'll give Gloria all of our best and have a
today,
fantastic night.
I'm sorry, I'm a poker player. Is it Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah, no, it's Monday still. So it's on Wednesday. You're going to be.
I'll see you in 2 days, Joe.
I'll be there, man. I'm looking forward to it as always.
Okay, bye, guys.
All right, take care. Carlos Welch, everybody. We got him back. I knew that was going to be a fun conversation. Such an interesting character. And yeah, so I do hope folks go and check out his fantastic show. John Somsky, why don't we talk about some upcoming or some recent home game results, and then we'll roll a die, the die of mystery, and see who's going to win a fantastic prize tonight.
That sounds good to me. On July 22nd, Don't Chase 666, Joseph Armstrong got his first daily victory for the year. Michael Babker got his third nightly victory for the year. Dandy Resg, Daniel A, got his first nightly victory for the year. Uncle Tom's Cabin won his first daily mixed event this year. And then Evil Roy CA won his first and second international events of the year on Saturday.
Wow.
Then a really mad guy, won his second LPP event for the year. So he can contact info@rec.poker for his free month at Learn Pro Poker.
All right, fantastic work, everybody. Great to see these folks playing in our free play money home games and winning real prizes, including, as you mentioned, the Sunday game where the winner gets a free month at Learn Pro Poker. And on the weeks where Ryan LaPlante also plays in our home game, if you take him out, there is a bounty on his head of another free month at Learn Pro Poker. Just one of the perks of signing up for a free account here at RecPoker. So that's awesome. And I should just mention, so the prizes that we're going to give away on the show every week, if you're not a RecPoker premium member, then congratulations, you're going to win a month of premium membership at RecPoker. If you are already a RecPoker premium member, then this is just one of the perks, is it actually gives you the chance to win a free month of some of our other fantastic learning partners. Learn Pro Poker, Solve for Why, Jacka Coaching, pokercoaching.com, Red Chip, the Poker Forge, Run It Once, all these fantastic organizations that have decided to share some of their premium paywalled training material with our members. Rob Washam, you wanted to jump in there.
You're talking my language. I was just has anyone watched the latest Learning with Partners video from Jacka Coaching?
Oh, those
it
are
was
so
on
good.
multi-way pots, which, this is something that I know a lot of us struggle with. I know I do, because most of the training and studying you do is based on heads-up scenarios. So when you have an opportunity to have somebody, a coach like that, kind of explain some of the nuances and some of the strategies you might need for multi-way pots, it goes a long way to your instruction. So if you're interested in more of that kind of stuff, you can go to the RecPoker website under resources, click on learning partners, and you can get 15% off your first month of Jacka Coaching. Just go to our website.
Yeah, so check it out, folks. This is so Rob's referencing our Learning with Partners program, where a lot of these fantastic training sites from all around the world give our members access to their paywalled premium training material. And it's just one of the perks of being a premium member here at RecPoker. And you can also get a discount if you sign up at any of these training sites to help us out and to help yourself out. It's a great way to sort of grow your knowledge of the game. So go ahead to rec.poker/resources to find out more about that, or you can just email info@rec.poker and we'll give you some more details about the prizes you can win and the amazing partnerships that we have with some of these fantastic training sites. All right. Why don't we give away a prize right now? So I know Rob Delaney is number one, and he is such a good guy. He says if we roll a number one, he's also going to donate $20 to a local food bank. What a guy. Thank you so much, Rob.
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
I'll match that. If you roll on Rob, I'll also donate 20. So
what a guy. Joe.
I love everybody else, but we're rooting for Rob here.
Yeah, we are kind of rooting for Rob now, aren't we? All right, well, that would be great. So I see Rob's number one, Hubie is 2, Phil is 3, Joe Walton's 4, Joe Millay is 5. And then the RRRCCC is 6. K-Poker Wannabe is 7. Welcome back. And I've only got an 8-sided die here. So if we roll an 8, I'll donate $20 to a local food bank, and we'll re-roll and see if we can get another winner. So rooting for, I mean, it's going to be a 1 because I only know how to roll ones. But let's just see who is the winner this week. It's a 5. Let's do the math again. That was
JD Millay.
All right, Joe Millay. Joe cannot stop winning over here at Rec Poker. That's fantastic. Joe became I guess I'm going to dox the guy a little. Joe became a premium member a few months ago, won his first home game, I think the next month, won his first tournament of champions the month after that. And the guy is just on this ascent in the poker world. We got a chance to do some chatting over Zoom. He's been an active member in a lot of our study groups, and it's just great to see these active players get better and better at this game that we all enjoy. And so congratulations, Joe. Yeah, send that email to info@rec.poker, and we'll set you up with your fantastic prize. And yes, Phil's saying the bill of my hat is tilting him. Those are all those fantastic Rec Poker pins that you can only win by beating other people in our home game club. John Somsky shows his off a lot better than I do. He's got the whole thing above the brim, but my big stupid forehead gets in the way, and I can't do that. But yes, the games are free, but the prizes are real. So congratulations again to Joe Millay. And what else do we have to hit on here, folks? I will say we're making some major upgrades to our Discord. So I would encourage everybody, if you haven't checked out the Discord recently, if you can go to rec.poker/Discord, I think that you can get an invitation code there. I'm just going to check that while we're talking. But it is a much more structured and organized area now with a lot of excellent features and different kind of conversations that you can join for free. We've also added a premium element to our Discord that's happening over the next little while. And if you want to get involved with that, yeah, just head on over to rec.poker/Discord, and you can find an invitation to join. All right. Well, I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I think I'm just going to thank Carlos Welch, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, John Somsky, Rob Washam, Joe Coolis, and Kim Kilroy. Thank you for all your support to the RECing Crew and all that you do every week and month. Everyone in the YouTube chat, particularly Rob Delaney, thank you so much for that donation, my friend. And all of you at home, we couldn't do it without you. So have a great week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Rec Poker Podcast. All right, good night.